Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So, today I'm going to talk about a couple of issues. The first issue involves President Joe Biden passing very important executive orders dealing with racial matters. And Joe Biden passed like four different executive orders recently dealing with race, and I'm going to focus primarily on two of those executive orders. The first executive order calls on the Department of Housing and Urban Development to take necessary steps to redress racially discriminatory federal housing policies that have contributed to wealth inequality for generations. So that is a major step forward. That is something that should be commended and celebrated. One thing that also needs to be added is that the Biden administration is going to reassess the decisions made by the Trump administration. So, for example, the Trump administration had passed certain policies or whatever that would make it more difficult for plaintiffs to prevail in housing discrimination cases. Um, And so the Biden administration is going to look at these different policies and assess whether or not they're needed. And more likely than not, the Biden administration is going to eliminate a lot of the Trump policies that made it harder for plaintiffs to prevail in housing discrimination cases. Um, and nobody should be surprised that Donald Trump would make it harder for plaintiffs to prove housing discrimination, especially in light of the fact that Donald Trump was actually sued twice by the Department of Justice for housing discrimination. So this is a positive development that you have Joe Biden, within a week of being appointed, taking action on these very important racial matters. We know that wealth is often built based on people's ownership of real estate, and all these discriminatory policies that have been in place for years have made it difficult for African Americans to actually build wealth. And some of the past policies that have contributed to this massive wealth gap between black people and white people have been policies of redlining, policies of racially restrictive covenants, just outright racial segregation of neighborhoods. So it's a great thing that you have the Trump administration prioritizing this very important issue. Another thing that has to be pointed out is that Susan Rice, and she's a official in the Biden administration, she talked about how under the Biden administration, every agency will place equity at the core of its public engagement. So that is very important. And I think that that's a major positive step in the right direction. So, in addition to that, the Biden administration also has taken executive action to end the Department of Justice's use of private prisons. And this is a measure designed to address the problem of mass incarceration in this country. We know that that is a major issue impacting black communities, as documented in Michelle Alexander's masterpiece, The New Jim Crow. We know that when you have financial incentives created by private prisons to incarcerate more people, that's going to feed the problem of mass incarceration. When it is financially beneficial to private industry to have more black people locked up, you're going to have more black people locked up. They're going to do what is necessary to continue to make money off of the incarceration and oppression of black people. So I'm glad that they have made this first step. Um, One thing that has to be pointed out is that this executive order doesn't apply to all federal agencies. It only applies to the Department of Justice, but it is a step in the right direction. It doesn't apply to the Department of Homeland Security and other departments. So this is something that we need to continue to push for change in this area. This is only the beginning. but it's the right step, it's the right thing to do. And these actions should be commended. No one's going to say that we're completely satisfied, that, we can go home and rest now because a couple of executive orders have been passed. But again, this is a step in the right direction. It is a positive message being sent to the black community. And I'll get into that a little bit more in my further commentary. But this is a lot. This is a great thing. Biden has only been in office for about a week now, and he's already taking steps to address massive racial inequality that exists in this country. And that has to be contrasted to how the Trump administration dealt with questions of race. First of all, the Trump administration tried to deny the existence of institutionalized racism. Um, you had the Attorney General speaking on Donald Trump's behalf, basically downplaying racism, downplaying the existence of institutionalized racism. Whereas with the Biden administration, they acknowledge the problem of institutionalized racism, and they are taking the steps, concrete steps, to address this problem. And as they have pointed out themselves, this is only the beginning. They plan to push legislation to address racial equity. They plan to push things like more funding for small businesses. A lot of these people here on YouTube talk about the importance of black people owning and controlling their own businesses. And I agree with that. One way that you can help make that happen is by increasing funding for small businesses. Another thing that the Biden administration plans to do, according to the reports that I have read, they plan to invest more into historically black colleges and universities. We know that black colleges and universities are responsible for educating large numbers of African Americans, making it possible for African Americans to enter the middle class and upper classes, and to get a quality education so that they can be professionals. And one of the ways that we can advance the plight of black people, or to improve the plight of black people, is by making an investment in these historically black colleges and universities. And another thing that the Biden administration plans to do is they plan to triple the funding for Title I schools, and those are schools in areas that are in large part minority. Many of the schools that are Title I schools are schools with large populations of African Americans. So again, this is just the beginning. The Biden administration, according to these reports, has plans to actually follow up on a lot of these campaign promises that they have made with respect to addressing racial inequality in this country. And one thing that Joe Biden emphasized when he made these announcements and stuff like that is he talked about George Floyd and what happened to George Floyd, and how this forced the country to focus on these racial issues. They could no longer be ignored. So I have to commend, the Biden administration for taking a step in this direction. So there are a couple of other points that I want to make on this subject. And the first point is just about how Joe Biden isn't saddled with many of the burdens that Obama had. As the first black president, he was under pressure to not focus solely on black issues. The Obama administration would constantly remind people that he was the president for all America and not for just black America. And, he had to worry about being perceived as having bias towards African Americans, as, had to worry about being put in a position where he's looked as if he is favoring African Americans and all that kind of stuff. And Joe Biden, fortunately, doesn't have to deal with that issue, so he can come right in to office and start implementing a lot of these policies dealing with the racial divide, dealing with racial inequality in the society without having the same burdens that Obama had. Um, Another thing that I want to point out is this, I'm sure that, a lot of these quote unquote hoteps will not be satisfied with this. They will have many things to say about this, about how it's not doing enough and all that kind of stuff. They will say we need tangibles and reparations and all that kind of stuff. They will focus on that, not realizing, I don't think these people understand that, reparations, first of all, is an issue that I fully support. I support reparations. My support for reparations is well documented by my content on this channel. It's well documented by my written blogs that I did before I even started here on YouTube. So I support reparations. But the problem is a lot of these hoteps have made it their sole issue. They have made it seem as if that is the only issue that matters to the black community. And it's not. It is not the only issue. You have all kinds of issues dealing with inequality in education. You have health disparities, wealth disparities. You have police brutality and racial profiling. You have the problem of mass incarceration. All of these problems need to be addressed. And I'm glad that the Biden administration is making steps in that direction. So people need to stop trying to shower positive things with negativity. And too often that's what happens. You have these people that go around nitpicking and looking for reasons to criticize something that should be commended. So that's one thing that I had to point out. The other thing is this. These steps that Biden is making, within his first week and even his first day in office, he made some major steps that deal with the black community. These steps that he's making just further bring home the point of the importance of the black vote. The fact that black people were so critical in this election, that black people made it possible for him to win the nomination and to win the election, the role that black elected officials played in helping him win the election. All of that together, the large black voter turnout for Joe Biden has, made it so that they have no choice but to prioritize our issues. They have no choice because they know that we were crucial in getting Joe Biden elected. And they understand that there are civil rights organizations that they have met with that will continue to apply the pressure to Joe Biden to make sure that he follows through with a lot of his promises. So because of that, you have Biden, making these kind of steps, stepping in the right direction, making the right decisions this early on in his election, So again, this is commendable. I have nothing but respect for these decisions to take these steps. And, I'm going to continue to monitor the Biden administration. If they do something that I approve of, that I support, I'm going to make it known. If they do something that I object to or that I oppose, I will use my voice just as I have used with all politicians that have been elected, whether it's Obama or Donald Trump. I will use my voice to voice my opposition as I have done. During the primary, I voiced my concerns about Joe Biden's track record. And that brings me to, this final point that I want to raise in this video. And that's this. Like, I had a debate on my personal Facebook page with someone, and they were saying, well, they had all this negative stuff to say about Joe Biden and his record. They had stuff to say about him being a racist in the past and blah, blah, blah. That's what they had to say. And this is what I have to say in response. Of course, I didn't agree with everything that Joe Biden has done. I opposed his position on the crime bill. I spoke out about his position on busing and all those things. But let's be clear. A lot of people that criticize him have to go all the way back to the 60s and 70s and the 90s. Over 30 years ago. They got to go back that far to criticize him. Instead of going back in the past, going back over 30 years to find some bad things about him, let's look at what he's doing today. And I think that today he's done some very significant things in this very short period of time. While he was doing these, while Joe Biden has made these steps to address racial inequality in this society, you had Trump, who not that long ago, why people want to go way back in the past, all you have to do is look back a couple of months when Trump was in office and what he did. Again, he didn't even acknowledge that race discrimination was a institutionalized problem in this country. He joked about police brutality at a time when black people were being killed by police without any kind of justice in sight. That's what Donald Trump did. Donald Trump, pandered to white supremacists time and time again. He told those people that were engaged in that riot in Charlottesville that there were some very fine people there. That's what he had to say about that. He encouraged that angry mob to storm the Capitol, a mob that carried Confederate racist signs and flags and all that kind of stuff, and wore racist T-shirts. So that's what Donald Trump represents. So instead of digging up some past from 30 years ago, let's look at what's happening now. Let's look at recent history and compare what Biden is doing right now to what Trump did during his term in office. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Tell me what you all think. Please rate, comment, subscribe, like the video, share the video, hit that notification bell so that you will know when I post new content on here. Peace and blessings, and have a great evening.